Today on the Eduel podcast, we're thrilled to welcome the CEO of Atomic Entertainment, Jerry Kolber. Jerry is the co-creator and showrunner of Brainchild, a live-action kids' original science series on Netflix, as well as National Geographic's Brain Games, which earned a Primetime Emmy nomination. Oh, wow. Jerry is also the co-creator of the hugely popular educational podcast Who Smarted, which has amassed over 20 million downloads. Jerry's passion for edutainment has helped inspire curiosity and engagement in kids around the world. We are thrilled to have a conversation with him about the important work he is doing and how educators and parents can use podcasts and other creative tools to make learning more engaging and fun. Let's dive into the well.
Welcome to the Eduel podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. With over 30 years of combined teaching experience, our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow educators on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information, filled with meaningful discussions, practical tips, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together. Jerry, hello, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you both.
So, I'm hoping we can start way back at the beginning. We're going to think back to your childhood, Jerry, when you were going to school. Can you tell us about your experience as a student and how that experience has shaped what you are doing today in the world of edutainment?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I was like a combination of like a great student and a terrible student. And I was great in the sense that I loved participating in like activities in the school. I liked doing like, I would come up with like things to do with like the theater group or like, doing the morning announcements at my elementary school or working on like the school newspaper. And so like I was really involved in that and like a really active part of it. But I when it came to like actual classroom learning, I tended to do really well in subjects that were like super interesting to me and like kind of more hands-on, like writing and stuff like that. And then when it came to subjects like math and science, even though I was honestly like I was interested in them and I was like always going to like the science museum and like doing chemistry kits at home, but something about the way things were taught in the classroom when I was going to school did not kind of align with how I learn. And I really was not a great student for my math teachers and science teachers. And yet I was always curious about that stuff. And so, I didn't understand that there was different learning styles until I actually started working on educational television shows and doing research and started learning about like some kids are better at learning visually, some are more auditory, some are better at reading, some are better hands-on, some are more musical. There's all these different ways kids learn. And so that was a light bulb moment for me. And that's what really inspired me to think like, how many kids are there like me who are interested in science and interested in math and curious and who are not engaging in the classroom? And is there a way that I could provide an entry point for them that makes them more likely to engage and also makes it an easier classroom for a teacher, because now the kid's coming in excited to learn and not fighting it. And so that's been the kind of journey for me from childhood to what I'm doing now.
There are a lot of students who have that same lived experience, and we have the opportunity every single day to work with those students, and we're really lucky. So specifically, something that I think addresses the type of learning preferences that you were talking about is Who Smarted, which is the podcast for students. And it's a fun and kid-friendly podcast. Hey, it's adult-friendly too. And it uses storytelling and humor to spark curiosity and make learning engaging. As a teacher, I have to tell you how much I appreciate Who Smarted. It delivers that wealth of information in bite-sized pieces. It's accessible, it's engaging. And for me as a teacher, it provides that springboard for sparking curiosity. It encourages deeper discussions for afterwards, and it can inspire those creative projects, which, by the way, you just listed things you enjoyed doing. Those are ways we can use project-based learning in classrooms or at home. So before we jump into how the podcast can work in the classroom, can you tell us about the process behind creating the episodes of Who's Smarted? What are some things that you and your team have to consider when creating this content, like attention span of kids and adults nowadays, and the different engagement levels and addressing diversity of learners?
Yeah. First of all, let me just say, Alex, thank you for that description of what you think of Who's Smarted. I want to just like record that and just, play that over. Like that was exactly like, that makes me so happy because that's exactly what we were intending. And to hear you experience the show that way is really, really, really gratifying. We have a pretty intensive process behind the creation of the show because we know that the show does get used in actual classrooms. It gets used in a lot of homeschools, and then it gets used in a lot of families and car rides. And so we realize that we're really embedded into the lives of children and families. And so we do have a team of researchers. The show, when we originally created it, we did have educational experts for these primarily children like 6 to 10 years old. So we worked with experts and researchers to help us understand different learning styles, and also even things that seem as simple but are actually complex, like how much information can a child retain, and what is the best way to get them to retain that information. And so out of that research and experimenting came the format that exists now. And it's actually as different as I think we've done 600 episodes now, as different as each one is in terms of topic, whether it's science or history or pop culture, there is a very clear underlying framework to each episode that's very kind of set in stone because it works. So we know that the kids like to feel like they're being taken on an adventure, that they're sort of discovering the opportunity for adventure. So every episode opens with the narrator kind of stumbling into the subject and in some kind of fun way. And then it's like, okay, well, there's these 3 questions we want to answer, right? So we always state the 3 questions at the top. And so that's sort of setting the stage for the kids. It's like a subtle way to say, pay attention, because we know you're going to want to know the answers to these 3 questions. And then throughout the episode, as we answer them, we have actually built in, like, every 2 to 3 minutes, we kind of reset for the attention span, because we know that kids have about roughly 3 minutes when they're being delivered information before they start to kind of tune out a little bit. Actually, adults do as well, by the way. That's
what?
It's not
That's
just
true.
About?
It's not just
Okay.
kids. Yeah. But
Oh yeah. Wait, what were you saying?
Chelsea's like, I've stopped listening 7 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I'm boring myself. So we reset every few minutes with like some sort of like a pop quiz, right? And so the kids start to know that's coming, and so they start to pay attention. And then the other thing is we really work with writers who have a sense of humor and who are really passionate about learning, because we set the stage for this show early on that it was going to be a show that kids would love, but that parents and educators would also love. Like, that was really important to us, because there's a lot of great audio podcasts that are really for kids that adults would not want to listen to with them. And those are great, and they have their place. But we really wanted to create something that was co-listening, that if you guys use it in the classroom, you're not like, oh my gosh, like, that you would really enjoy, and that parents would enjoy playing in the car with their kids. So that's also part of our process, is always making sure that the material is very accessible for kids, but also fun for adults.
It's so interesting. You mentioned something I want to quickly swing back to, which is the timing and how you switch up. I just listened to the most recent episode, let's say, about smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moment where you said something that absolutely shook me. And it had to do with the amount of my attention span's not great here, but it had to do with the amount of information that could be stored, or the amount of power that a smartphone had. And it was compared to something to do with the lunar landing or something.
Yeah.
And then you paused, and where I felt like you should have jumped back in, no, you didn't, because I needed more time to think about that and conceptualize that. And so I, as a teacher, recognized that and thought, I wonder if that is absolutely deliberate. It was so impressive.
Yeah.
So you can really see the amount of thought that's gone into the podcast. And so I also want to comment on the fact that the podcast reminds me of like a DK Reader on steroids. It's just absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
So with that, yes, thank you for creating such amazing content that we can enjoy with our students. I'd love to dive into the practicality of using podcasts in the classroom. And I think that that can increase student and teacher wellness. So we've become, as teachers since COVID, so skilled at incorporating tech into the classroom as we want to engage students in different ways. We're always trying to strike that balance between tech and traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jerry, let's explore, and maybe you can offer us some ideas as how we could use Who Smarted or Mysteries About True Histories and how they can be used in our classroom communities. Practical ideas.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I'm gonna ask you this. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions about that because you are using the show. I'm always curious. So it's funny when we started sharing that we're doing the show with teachers. We thought that teachers would use the show as an introduction to difficult topics. So if they were teaching their kids about gravity, our gravity episode is a perfect 12-minute introduction to the topic of gravity, and we'll kind of set the table for the actual lesson plan. But what we have found during our research over the last few years is actually, so most teachers seem to use the show not specifically aligned with a lesson, but just more as a general transition time helper. And that it seems to, like, whatever episode they choose to put on, coming back from recess or after switching classes or coming in from lunch, that it's just a nice 15-minute way to get the kids to settle in, get them excited about learning, get them all sort of working as a unit together. And so that's how we've heard it used more often than anything else is as sort of a transition helper. But I'm curious, like, how, like, is that like how you guys use it, or have you used Too Smart in a different way? Or
We've talked a lot about this, Chelsea and I, back and forth, and we've come up with some ideas. Definitely the 15-minute reset is one of the ways. Chelsea, you want to go back and forth on some of the ideas that we came up with?
Yes, definitely. And then I do want to share my experience using it just yesterday in the classroom. So I'm going to break down that content and I'll let you guys know how that went. So yes, transition times, absolutely. I'm thinking if you're getting a little bit deeper into it, you do the podcast clubs. So Alex, you and I have done book club in our classes many times, and that's always fun. And there's a lot of choice involved in that. And so you just take your ideas from book club and you use a podcast for that. So the kids can choose which podcast they're interested in listening to. They can listen to it on their own. And then you're providing them with like springboard materials that they can use to engage in critical thinking, to do projects related to it, presentations related to the information in the podcast. And it's also cool because they can figure out how they want to listen to it with their group, just like they figure out how to read with their group. Do they want to go around the circle and read? Well, do we want to march on the spot while we listen to our podcast? Do we want to color while we listen to our podcast? So a lot of choice that really the students are just so awesome at figuring out and makes it that much more engaging for them. So definitely the podcast clubs.
Love that.
Yeah. And that's something that we kind of want to try actually at some point, because we, like Chelsea said, do book clubs. You could also use it as a way for older kids to start taking jot notes, learning how to pick out the main ideas and the supporting details, and then start thinking critically about the content, about questions that students still have that they need to explore, and then provide opportunities for deeper level conversation to increase engagement on the topic. You could also use it as a way, and Jerry, I hope this doesn't intimidate you, to practice providing feedback to content creators. What do you think about what Jerry just presented? He was a host. He spoke with confidence. He spoke calmly and confidently, and really deconstructing the pieces of it. So then students can use what they're learning by pointing out these little bits to then use that as a springboard for when they are presenting. And it could open up conversations about a million different topics, because how many episodes did you say you already have?
We're at around 600.
Okay, not quite a million, but like hundreds of different topics. You are getting there. And so the lists go on and on about what students could do. You could also, we were talking earlier about different learning preferences. As students are listening, they could draw out and map out the learning that they've done. Classic pencil paper doesn't have to be the way. So the sky is the limit. And you know what, Chelsea, you and I are going to create a list for Jerry of all the different ways that we think of, and we'll send it.
I love it. I mean, we talk a lot about creating so for the show Brainchild that we did for Netflix, which is also for the same age group, TV show, obviously different kind of thing. But when we did that show, we were so excited about how it came out, and it because it teaches kids that show. There's like episodes on space, and there's episodes on emotional, social topics like social media and motivation. And we were like, we need to get this into the classroom in any way we can and make it easy for teachers. And so we actually hired a group of STEM consultants to create curriculum for grades 3 to 5 and 5 to 8. It's actually still there. If everyone wants it, it's at brainchildshow.com and it's free to download. And it was wild. Like we saw close to 100,000 downloads of it over the couple of years. And so that was all these teachers utilizing the show in their classroom. And so with Who Smarted, Who Smart just kind of grew. Like it wasn't like hey, we're going to make this big show. It was like, let's make this thing during the pandemic to help get kids off screens. And it's grown and grown and grown. And so one of the projects we have on our plate at some point sooner rather than later, I hope, is to create those kind of resources for Who Smarted so that teachers can say, oh, this aligns with this curriculum need. And then here's some lesson plans and here's different kinds of activities for kids who learn differently. So we're hoping to be able to achieve that in the next year or two.
Jerry, I had the opportunity to watch Brainchild. And I
nice.
watched, one of the episodes that I watched was, I think episode 1 was on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
And same idea with bite size. The learning experience is different. You have the advantage of the visual, but it still has a nice cadence and it's moving along. But as someone who works in student wellness quite a bit, the way that information was presented was very relevant and would be useful for teenagers, tweens to be watching and listening to it. I really enjoyed that. When I do the compare and contrast to the podcast, the listening experience allows students to multitask in a different way or listen in a vehicle, and they're not always checked out from the world. Right. So it's interesting. Brainchild, remind me, is that the one that you did with Pharrell?
Pharrell, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Excellent show. And I was surprised that it is from, I believe, 2016. Maybe it was later, but
I think we did 2018.
Okay. Yeah. So it was still very trendy, very cool, very relevant. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. It might have been a little ahead of its time.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
But that social media episode of Brainchild, we have gotten more feedback on that episode of television than any other episode of television we've ever made, from so many parents who tell us that episode they were able to share with their kids, and a conversation that kids roll their eyes at if their parents want to sit them down and say, okay, you're 11, you're about to get on social media. And the kid's like, please, I've been on social media, for forever. Yeah. We're looking at it. Parents tell us they're able to play that episode for their kids, and especially young women who see that first section of that show. That actually got recommended by the New York Times when the whole TikTok issue was going on, with how TikTok was so creating such negative body image for adolescent girls. They actually recommended that episode for parents to share, because it shows in a very visceral way how fake all of the body image and all of the influencer and all the glamour stuff on TikTok. We just like unpack it in a way that kids are like, oh wow, I never realized it's all fake. And so that was a really we came up with that idea, and just then you find out the impact it's having. And that's, to us, it's like, we don't ratings, whatever. It's like, we want to have impact. We want to make a difference. So.
Right. I just want to go back to, and I need to watch that Brainchild. I saw a few different ones, but I'm playing that one in my house tomorrow for sure. I just want to go back to the resource thing. Yes, it's great to have resources. That's always nice. Teachers love that. But we're getting tons of resources all the time now, especially with technology and the internet and all that. I think that Who Smarted is a fantastic resource in itself. First of all, because you have so many choices. You have, over 600 episodes. So when I'm using it just this week, I'm searching through and I'm like, what are we working on? We're doing basketball in phys ed. Okay, we're going to listen to the episode on basketball right now. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, how that went, and tell, listeners how easy it is to use this podcast in your classroom and just think of ideas on the spot. and just do activities on the spot. So minimal prep. We love minimal prep, right?
Yes. Yes. We love making it easy for teachers. You guys
Thank
And
have
you.
and we love you for that. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, although, Alex and I create and edit and host a podcast, I personally haven't used podcasts too much as learning tools in my classroom because I think there's a little bit of a reluctance there when you're looking at 30 grade eights and you're going, well, we're going to sit and we're going to listen. I mean, that's kind of tough, but it's very doable when you have the right tools in place. Okay. Because we often go to video. Okay. So everyone has something that they can look at and work with. But yesterday I played the basketball episode in my class. And like, I didn't really make a solid plan with it. I just said, okay, we're going to take 12 minutes. We're going to listen to a podcast episode. You can sit down, you can color, you can rest your head, you can do some stretching. And the kids were really happy to do this. Actually, they were really happy to do something other than video, like we've been talking about, right? Like you said, yes, great. We're not watching videos. We're doing something else. Okay. Something that's going to challenge us in a different way. So the episode we listened to was just over 11 minutes. And that I think is perfect for a classroom. If you want to run it straight through without stopping, 11 minutes is great. And I know that some episodes are longer, and that's great too, but the stopping and starting is really going to work well in the classroom for discussion. So that's what I plan on doing with the podcast going forward. And the awesome thing about Who Smarted is that these markers are in there for you. So you said, you're kind of doing a switch over around every 3 minutes, right, Jerry?
Yeah.
Well, the information, the questions that are being presented, you can stop and you can have a conversation. For instance, we came to a part of the podcast that was called Solve That Problem. So we were presented with a problem, which was related to basketball, and then we were asked to solve that problem. So that would be where teachers could stop and discuss. You could get into groups, you could have whole class discussion. I mean, many options of what you could do there. You could put the paper and pen to it. You could get some concrete materials. Like after that, I was like, okay, I want to get some materials in here and build mini basketball hoops and see how like the nylon works. Like that would be super fun. Endless ideas, really, because of the information that's in there.
I want to come to in your class.
Well, I love giving students the problem. I'm always amazed when you give students a problem or you give them a bunch of materials and you're like, okay, solve this or create this. And they just like things I would have never thought of. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing. So the point is there are problems presented in the podcast that we can use on the spot in the classroom. And that makes things really easy for us. There's also a joke at the end of the podcast, which is a great idea to grab the students' attention again and give them something to take with them, to their next class for their next teacher. And then after we listened to the basketball episode, I got the trusty trivia up. And now it's time to move, right? We need to move a little bit. So I just turned it into the 4 corners game, except it was 3 corners because the options for the questions were A, B, and C. So that's corner A, that's corner B, that's corner C. Play the trivia, and they move to whatever corner they think is the correct answer. That was really fun. We had a lot of fun with that. So many things you could do and super easy for teachers. I'm going to use digestion next week for my health class. I'm going to use the energy drinks one for debates, which brings me to debates. So debating, Jerry.
Yes.
This is another thing that we're going to do in our classes, but or that we are doing in our classrooms. I know you have experience with debating.
I do.
What do you think is going to make a really awesome debate in a grade 7, 8, 9 classroom?
I think taking a topic that kids are first of all something relatable, like energy drinks is a good one actually, right? Because like you could have the debate. I mean, the answer is kids should not be having any energy drinks, but you could have a debate about that. Like, when should kids be allowed to have energy drinks? You can have debates about, should kids be allowed to say whatever they want in a classroom? That'd be an interesting one.
Absolutely. So debating is one of your personal interests, and we have found more and more that we're bringing our personal interests and passions into the classroom. We're able to make learning more enjoyable for ourselves and for the students. And we want our students to be engaged, but we also want to be engaged as teachers. And that has to do with bringing things from your life that brings you joy. So how has pursuing your own passions helped you to do that? And what have you learned from taking chances, embracing imperfection, and turning failures into opportunities for growth? Because that's always the mindset that we're looking at in our podcast, Eduel.
I mean, that's like my mantra. We don't use the word failure around here. Like we just don't use it. I can't think of the last time I said I failed at something. I mean, in fact, I used to say it when I was younger, and every time I said that, it would just put me in such a bad headspace and just make me feel like, failing at something sounds like there was just no point to it. And, there's a tendency to view our lives as if they're like movies or happening in a box, but they're not. Like our lives are these wonderful, big, expansive things that unfold over decades and decades. And so I don't look at anything as a failure. I look at everything as an opportunity. And the more that I've leaned into that as I've gotten older, the more fun I've had and the more success I've had in terms of like achieving things and the impact that I want. We could have said early on with Who Smarted, because it wasn't getting a lot of listeners and it was taking a lot of time. We're like, oh, well, this failed. We could have said that. But instead we were like, this is interesting. How do we get more people to know about the show? And how do we make the show better? And how do we get more feedback on it? And so that's my process, is like learn, get better, just keep getting better. We
can relate to that.
Yeah, I know you can. I know that's literally what your podcast is about.
But the struggle has been real. Let me just be very clear. Yeah. There's a lot of learning in doing something like this. And you really do put yourself out there, and you're also putting yourself out there to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so our big connection in several of our first episodes was making connections in the classroom. And we know that we get more from students when we feel connected. So when it comes to the work that you do, if you want someone to listen, you need to connect and relate to them. So how do you approach connecting to your listeners, Jerry?
So it's actually there's sort of two answers to it. So one is the content itself has to be relatable, right? So if we're making a show for kids, we have to understand what kids want. We do. We talk to kids. We get feedback from kids. We get so many reviews from children. We read those. We interview children sometimes. We'll set up interviews with their parents and talk to them. So we make sure that we're really not only delivering content that they're interested in, like in terms of topics, but also delivering it in a way that's engaging for them. That part of it, we got covered. Like we understand very, very, very deeply how to do that at this point. But the other side of that is I can make all the great content in the world, and if people don't know it exists, then it doesn't matter. And so that's the piece of it that we learned early on, is that in order to grow the show, we have to go and tell people the show exists. We have to let them know that we're providing this value and this opportunity for learning and co-listening. And so that's a matter of like everything from press stuff to, getting written about. But the biggest way we found success doing that is actually in talking with people like you guys, honestly, like going to places where we know there's an audience that would really find value in what we're doing, and coming on and talking with you guys about providing value in the classroom. And at the same time, now people are learning about Who Smarted. That's not to be very meta about it, but we're actually doing it right now. So but honestly, like that's been a huge, like we've been so grateful for the opportunity to come and talk with other people on their shows about what we're doing, because that's been such a driver of growth for us. Probably the biggest one.
Well, Jerry, as you know, I'm using the podcast in my classroom. Alex is using the podcast, and we're going to get this out to people. And so we're going to be using Who Smarted, as an example, especially when it comes to showing students what content creation is all about. So tech is a part of our lives. We have to embrace this. We are embracing this. And we're always teaching about the dangers and the benefits and everything that comes with it. Kids are making media content, whether it's posted on the internet or not, and they are so good at it. Like, I mean, how long did it take me to figure out how to edit a video? And then my
Mm-hmm.
daughter in 5 minutes has made something that should be, on the movie screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
amazing. But I want to ask you, as someone who is an expert in media content creation, what do you think educators should focus on when teaching students about content creation?
The biggest thing I tell kids and adults about content creation is really ask yourself and really understand why you're creating something, right? And so, sometimes the answer is I'm creating this because I want to create something cool and weird and artistic, and fine, do it. But if the answer is, I'm trying to tell a story about something that happened to me, or I'm trying to help people understand who I am, or what kind of home I grew up in, or understand something about my culture, just really like putting everything through that filter as you start to develop the content, and always coming back to that core answer to the why, will help you make content that is going to be really on target and really specific. And then the only other thing I say before letting people loose is then also think about who are you making the content for, right? And be really specific. It's like, if it's for your friends in your classroom, that's different than if you're making the content for the adults in your life, right? And so thinking about who you're speaking to and how you want to connect with them is also really important. But I also I don't like to give too many rules around content creation, because sometimes if you don't give someone any advice, they do something so magical and so crazy and like wonderful that like you never would have got if you gave them a container. I think there is a time and space for like, here's a container to play in, but sometimes I'm just like, yeah, go. Like, some of the greatest stuff we've come up with at our company has been when someone's just gone off and come up with some crazy idea, and you're like, oh wow, that is not something I ever would have thought of with my own rules. So, so I love that. I love, and especially when you start to think about, if I'm telling you about, how to think about creating content, that's like, I'm a very specific person from a specific background with a specific experience. Like, there is such a diversity of people and experiences and backgrounds that I'm always more curious to say, like, you tell me how to create content, like I've done some projects over the years. Like we did a project with Pharrell. We did a documentary where we had people working on that show that were from like wildly different backgrounds from where I came from. And they were like, well, tell us how to go and, tell the story and what you want us to do. And I just said, I want you to just go do whatever you want to do. Like, I'm not going to give you any rules. Just go follow the story, but shoot it however you want. Ask the questions you want, because why would I want to send someone out with like, to be like a clone of me when you have this totally unique and diverse perspective? I would much rather see what you come up with. And so that tends to be more where I land on that question.
That sounds like a lot of empowerment. And that's something else that I think that, when we're all doing our job well and sitting in that strong pocket, we are empowering those around us to create their stories in the way that works for students. And we're just providing roadmaps and guides and the compass rose from time to time. We like to talk about maps at Eduel and Wells. I would love to share a quote that you said, and if this, I would love to share a quote, and if this doesn't work, then we'll not use it.
I'm excited to hear where this is going.
Okay. I actually think it's quite it's future thinking. So it's very relevant, and it's from 2013, and it's from Wired magazine, from an interview that you did with Jerry Marlowe, and it says, "We've started using technology as a means of isolation rather than exploration." He laments. You're the lamenter, Jerry. "I'd like to take the technology of TV and flip the common assumption that it's passive and flat and demeaning, that it's a passive and flat and demeaning medium, and turn it into something challenging." So, Jerry, wow, eh? What do you think about that quote?
Cool. That guy sounds great.
He does sound super,
By the way,
like he's going to create a podcast and a really cool show, a whole bunch of them.
No, there's a lot there. First of all, I would like to now always be known as the Lamenter. I think that's a very wonderful name. No, that was exactly what we were doing with Brain Games. In fact, Brain Games, I could never have made Brain Games if I hadn't worked at Children's Television Workshop with the Sesame Street crew like 10 years before that. And I was like, wow, like the way you guys think about making Sesame Street is so interesting, because everything is about talking to the audience. talking to the kids, always engaging the child, asking the child to count, or asking them to look at something, or asking them to remember something. And it just stuck with me. I was like, so funny. Like, I was working on these shows at Sesame Street. I'm like, I'm still playing with the show. Like, why don't we do this with adults? And so when the opportunity came around from Nat Geo to create Brain Games, I was like, had this light bulb moment of like, let's not make a passive show where we tell you about the brain and you experience the brain. I was like, let's make a TV show that's basically Sesame Street for grown-ups about the brain, where we're going to ask you to play, we're going to ask you to lean in, we're going to ask you to do things. And it was we were very lucky that Nat Geo took the chance on us to do that, and it worked really, really well. And that quote was me optimistically hoping that was going to be a new path for a lot of shows, and it actually hasn't been. And that is one of the reasons we pivoted into podcasting, because we were like, well, we can keep that idea going of engagement and interactivity in audio, and we don't have to ask permission from a TV network and go raise millions of dollars. Like, if we're really serious about impact, let's go have impact, even if it's a different medium. And that's where we pivoted into Who Smarted and what we're doing now.
Amazing. And I will never call you a lamenter again.
I love it. I love
Okay,
it. It sounds
cool.
like something from like Hellraiser, like,
I think
it's like a character from a horror movie. The lamenter is coming.
You
like
can
Game
use
of
it in your
Thrones.
next project. Yeah. you
The
can
lamenter.
take that.
I love it. Yeah, actually, I think there's one other thing I'd love to say though about, because you said a couple of times talking about empowerment and about engagement and getting kids in the conversation. And I do want to point out there's something unique about audio. Like, first of all, kids don't get to listen to audio a lot. They're always on screens. And so you're actually more engaged when you listen to audio, because you're creating the vision. Like, you're not being provided this passive image. You're creating it. You're deciding what everything looks like. But there's a bunch of research that we found over the last 10 years that shows that kids will actually comprehend subject matter 2 to 3 grade levels higher via audio than if they read the same material. And I can share the link to you. There's some really wonderful academic research on this. And that same research shows that kids are significantly more likely to engage in conversation around that subject if they discover the subject through audio rather than reading. And so there is an empowerment that happens with audio as well, where children who might struggle to read and comprehend, which is not just kids with learning difficulties, it's like a lot of kids have that. Those kids are not going to have that problem listening, right? So all of a sudden they're part of the conversation when it's audio. And so whether it's Who Smarted or Wow in the World or Smash Boom Best, or there's a bunch of great educational shows for kids. I'm just like a huge advocate for whenever possible, like exposing kids to this medium. I'm in love with it, and I'm in love with what it's able to do for kids and teachers.
Yeah, I mean, we're always doing that. Okay, you can listen to the audiobook or you can listen to the text, but you're still following along with the words. So
Right.
having the podcast with the sound effects and the different voices and everything, that's going to get into your head more, right? That's very entertaining.
Yeah.
And educational.
Yeah. Kids recognize, when they're listening to a podcast, that it's that the material was designed for the podcast, that we're not just like, now we're going to read a book, or, you're right. Like, it's fully designed and it's immersive.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to talk about time bundling, because I walk in podcast all the time, and I've increased my ability to learn and be entertained and to connect by listening all at the same time. And I'm not ruining my eyesight. I'm not going to end up with a stigmatation. I'm looking forward and I'm being healthy at the same time. When I'm like this, Jerry, and I'm sorry for the audience who's listening, looking down as though I'm on my cell phone, there is a level of checking out from the rest of the world that isn't the same as when you're listening to a podcast. And for me, I grew up with radio around me all the time. And to me, podcast is very similar to radio. Mm-hmm. However, it's a curated experience. So what it is that I want and need to learn about, or what it is that I need support in my life about, I can look that up in 2 seconds, and I can have a warm voice that I can focus on warm or cold, I don't know. Okay, whatever. And that listening experience is richer for me. So I agree with you that taking it in is a deeper experience. And that's been my experience too.
Awesome. By the way, I don't know if you guys know this. A couple of months ago, we got basically a grant to make the paid subscription of Who Smarted available to classroom educators for free. Because we had heard from a lot of teachers they weren't comfortable necessarily using these shows in their classroom because they had ads. And so our subscription, Who Smarted Plus, has no ads on it. And so we actually have that available now. If you go to whosmarted.com and click on educators, it's free for life for any teacher. So
we appreciate that as educators so much. Again, Jerry, you're making our lives so much easier. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. My mother will be happy to hear that. She was a classroom educator for many years. And I was always like, man, it's a hard job. So
we are very grateful for that. And we are very grateful that you took the time to connect with us today. Teachers are always presented with a wealth of resources, but it is very rare to have the opportunity to speak directly with the creative minds behind them. So we're so grateful for hearing your insights and learning about the passion and the purpose behind your work. This really makes a difference for us. So thank you for being here with us today. And before you go, Jerry, we would like to ask you, as we do all of our guests, to leave us with a takeaway. Not that you haven't already left us with a lot of takeaways, but it can be anything you want to share. What message or information or wisdom do you want to leave for the wonderful teachers of the world today?
I would just say, stay curious, keep the kids curious, keep answering their questions, tell them to look up their answers, just really keep the curiosity going in yourself and the kids, because the world's a big place and we're never done exploring it.
All right. Well, on that note, Jerry, we would like to once again thank you so much for coming out and joining us for this wonderful conversation. I, for one, am inspired and ready to try new things in my classroom community and beyond. And I would like a phone call, or you can call Chelsea and I, or email us, sorry. I would like you to email us when you create the show, The Lamenter, about the student who's received a bunch of text messages that are really bothering him, and he's thinking about it way too much, or she's thinking about it way too much. And we create the show, The Lamenter. We'll just be like the, 7-8 guides for you about Okay.
I love it.
Thinking, Alex.
I love it.
Thanks. Jerry, before you go, where can our listeners find you and all of the awesome stuff you are doing in edutainment?
Yes. Well, Who Smarted and Mysteries About True Histories, you can find those both on any podcast app. whosmarted.com is where our free educator subscription lives. And if you're looking for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm LinkedIn Jerry-Kolber, Jerry-Kolb, B as in box, ER.
Well, Jerry, we hope you be well and do well on all of your future endeavors.
Thank you. This was a fun conversation. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Eduwell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the Eduwell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.